Nigeria has restated its determination to keep subsidies on petrol despite the pressure from the global financial institutions to remove it. Minister of Information and Culture, Lai Mohammed, says removing petrol subsidies will result in unintended consequences, adding that this is a most inauspicious time to withdraw the price buffer, as many other nations are introducing measures to help citizens cope with high oil prices, and Nigeria could not be an exemption. Mohammed's position on petrol subsidies reaffirmed that of President Muhammadu Buhari, who recently chided the West for demanding petrol subsidy removal while they continued to seek new ways to relieve their own citizens of the effect of the harsh global economy. A report in Tuesday's edition of This Day, Arise News' sister publication, also quoted the information minister as saying that the Buhari administration is leaving Nigeria more secure than it met it in 2015, despite the worsening insecurity in the country. Joining us to discuss the government's reluctance to remove fuel subsidy and assess whether the nation is more secure now are Andrew Nevin of PricewaterhouseCoopers, Gbolahan Olojede, a financial expert and development expert and also a public policy analyst, as well as Dr. Kabir Adamu, a security expert. Welcome all three gentlemen to Newsday. Thank you so much for joining us for this discussion.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you. Good afternoon.
All right. So I guess I'll start with you, Mr. Olojede, since you're here in the studio.
Okay.
We have heard the Minister of Information and Culture. We've heard his statements about the fact that Nigeria is more safe now than it was before. Can you explain to us, maybe very briefly, in your opinion, what that is and exactly why that statement might not be as accurate as he may think?
Well, I think maybe it depends on who you're asking. If you ask someone in the Northeast, you might say, oh, you're correct. In the Northeast 7 years ago, things were very hot. Borno, Yobe, even Adamawa, very hot. But if you ask someone in Sokoto or Kaduna, the story will be totally different. If you ask someone in the Southeast, it will be different. If you even ask someone in, say, Owo, it's a totally different ballgame. So in more part of Nigeria, security has degenerated. But in the Northeast, it actually went down a bit. Yeah.
And sorry, can I interrupt and say, how does this relate to the fuel subsidy crisis? Because we know that there's a lot of vandalization. We know we're losing millions of barrels of petroleum. And a lot of the reasons are being lumped on insecurity. A lot of the outcome of these bad situations are insecurity. So if you could also touch on how those two relate.
Insecurity, fuel subsidy, maybe not directly, but there is a link, a linkage. Now, one of the reasons we may not be able to remove fuel subsidy at this time is actually the prevailing economic circumstances. Now, under the prevailing economic circumstances, you have price increase, dramatic, or what you can even call a stagflation is going on. So when people are facing the kind of inflation we are facing, and you may have to think twice before you think about removing a fuel subsidy. And part of the reason we are facing that economic crisis has to do with the food inflation. Food inflation, when you decompose our inflation numbers, you see food inflation being high somewhere there. Part of the reason food inflation is high is because some farmers could not go into the farms because of insecurity. So indirectly, you may link them, but directly, they are not exactly correlated directly.
All right, let's turn our attention to Andrew of PricewaterhouseCoopers. Andrew, talk to me. I want to find out from you. Which is a bigger cancer to the Nigerian economy? The refusal of the government to take away fuel subsidy, or the fact that more than 80% of our oil is being stolen?
Oh my God, that's a difficult choice. I mean, it's just, it's extraordinary if we think about it for a moment. I mean, I've been here a long time. If you had told all of us that we would have $130 US dollar oil in the world and we would be suffering the way the economy and the society is, we would all be astonished. We all thought we were an oil economy. Why is it not possible to prosper at $130 oil? I think the last year has really taught us we're not really an oil economy. And as you say, one of the reasons for it is because we have the theft of the onshore oil pipeline. And of course, it's been reported. I was with actually a senior executive in the oil industry the other day who told the conference I was at that it's true that there are a number of pipelines where 90% of the onshore oil is being stolen before it gets to its destination. So between the fuel subsidy and the oil theft, which is worse, I guess on balance, probably the oil theft is worse, particularly at $130 oil, because we can all do the mathematics of how much we're losing in the country. I mean, we're producing a total of about 1.3 million barrels a day. When I came to this country, we're producing over 2 million barrels a day. So you can do the mathematics on that difference. It's just enormous and very, very difficult for us.
Now, Dr. Kabir Adamu, the Minister of Information, in that same interview, repeated calls for Western countries to declare IPOB a terrorist group. How do you expect the international community to react to this? What will be the significance if this is granted? And will it make Nigeria safer or boost Nigeria's security in any way?
Thank you. The secessionist agitation by the indigenous people of Biafra is one out of several security challenges that is affecting Nigeria. Now, assuming, for instance, that these Western countries support this call by the Minister of Information or by extension by Nigeria, what it would do is it would probably block the funding avenues of the indigenous people of Biafra. We know, for instance, that it's got membership across the globe and that those memberships support the funding generation capabilities of IPOB. There's no part of the world that you go to that you don't see some semblance of IPOB representation, either in forms of individuals who are wearing its symbols or insignia, whatever you want to call it. And we are told through intelligence sources that they buy these symbols and insignia, and that money ends up somehow in Nigeria to fund the operation. So if these Western countries support this call and block all of this funding revenue generation, processes by IPOB, it would definitely have an impact on the group and its ability to operate. Likewise, its mobilization effort across the globe. In some countries, the group is able to establish offices, and it uses that offices for lobbying, for other aspects of mobilization. So if that is stopped, it would definitely have an impact. But like I said at the beginning, this is just one out of several security threat factors within Nigeria.
Dr. Adamu, let me just ask you if you could do a bit of a comparative analysis in terms of the security situation that we're currently facing and that of 2015.
Well, so it depends on what aspect of security we're looking at. If we pick just fatalities as a baseline to compare, in other words, the number of persons dying across the country, frankly, there hasn't been any improvement. In 2015, what we recorded was a figure hovering between 7,000 to 8,000. Now, this is what we're recording in 2020, at least in 2021. We're in the middle of the year, it's approaching around 5,000. If it maintains the current tempo, then it means at the end of 2022, we still have about probably near 10,000 people dying. So in terms of figures, metrics, numbers, there hasn't been any significant changes. But if I go deeper and look at the dynamics that are operating within the security sector, there are changes within the threat environment. So as an example, banditry was not such a huge issue in 2015. It's now a huge issue. In fact, it's arguable that the contribution from banditry to fatalities is even higher than what used to be the major contributor in 2015, which used to be terrorism. The secessionist agitation that I mentioned, it was an issue in 2015, but it's become a big monster now. And if you go to Imo State, Anambra State, government and administrative machinery is almost at a standstill. And so these are the dynamism and the ramifications of security have changed from 2015 to 2022. And unfortunately, it looks like the change would continue. And some of these changes are impacting the ability of the state to carry out day-to-day functions, unfortunately.
All right, let me get back to Andrew. Andrew, we're still talking fuel subsidy, and I want to find out from you. The Minister of Information has spoken about the fact that we'll get to Andrew in a moment, but let's come back to you here, Bolahan. I want to find out from you. The Minister in a statement said untold hardship will be meted out to Nigerians if the subsidy is actually removed. But some are saying that it's more of a political statement than an economic reality, that we're just kicking the can down the road.
It's actually,
how do we balance this?
It's a bit more complex. When the economy was okay, we could not remove fuel subsidy. The OBJ government tried it and dropped it. Jonathan tried it and dropped it. Those were not, we didn't have this economic problem as at that time, right? So it could not be wholly blamed on the economy. The number one, the topmost reason is not even political. The topmost reason is that the beneficiary of that system are not willing to let go. There's too much money on the table in the subsidy, and it is a dark hole of unaccountability. So the beneficiary will do anything whatsoever.
But President Muhammadu Buhari was once quoted saying that when you talk about fuel subsidy and the whole gamut that follows, or that actually evolves around it, it's actually reeks of corruption. Apparently,
I would say his understanding of that space was based on when he was minister. There was a 30-year gap, and the space had totally changed. When he came, this was the same person who said, "What is subsidy?" But he has been paying subsidy for 7 years, and we don't even know when we're going to get out of it. So apparently, that is the number one problem, the fact that the beneficiaries will not let go. These were beneficiaries who were willing to kidnap the mother of the former Minister of Finance. These were people who sent her a letter and said, "You better resign or go, or you will live on a wheelchair." That was how desperate that force is, and still, up till today, they're still there. The second is the political. On the political level, nobody wants to make that kind of a decision in an election season. You do it, the people will automatically turn against you, and you might even lose an election. So for the beneficiary, the political issue makes their case better. Now, on the political level, government will not try it, which means the beneficiary continue to enjoy the largesse that they enjoy. So the economy that the minister mentioned is a third-level thing, and that is global. It's not peculiar to Nigeria. That's why you see, I think South Africa just went back to normal price a couple of days ago. They've also been helping their people to pay part of the price. And you see that happening in one way or the other in some other parts of the world.
Now, let me interrupt you and bring in Andrew. Andrew, despite the fact that the federal government is paying subsidies, some marketers are still agitating for the price of fuel to be increased, saying that they find it difficult to distribute due to high cost of diesel and oil. And then Nigeria has also raised its deficit forecast twice this year, and it has increased borrowing to cover the cost of subsidy. Now, what's the implication of this on the Nigerian economy if we continue like this?
Well, I think the way Bolahan has characterized this is exactly right. We're kind of in the final death throes of this subsidy. It's a monster that's consuming the country. The number out there every month rises to 4 trillion, I've heard, maybe higher than that. The people who are benefiting from this subsidy, of course, are desperate to hold on to it for as long as possible, and it's causing real harm in the economy. So if you think, for example, a small amount of the subsidy would be able to solve the issues we have with the universities and the strike, the amount of human capital that we've lost. So let me just make up some numbers about this. Even if 10,000 of the graduates were delayed a year, were going abroad and earning $40,000 a year, that's a $400 million loss we've had just from 10,000 people because their school has been delayed. So the knock-on implications of the fuel subsidy are just enormous for the country. We're not investing in Nigerian young people were investing in essentially a corrupt system. And of course, not just me saying that. I mean, many people have said it. His Royal Highness Mohammed Sanusi II, I think most eloquently, and of course, his knowledge of how the system worked in his time in office on that. So it has to come to an end. I think Bolhan is exactly right. It's very difficult in the current circumstances with the rising oil price and the election year combined. We were very close to having a subsidy. Of course, it was supposed to expire at mid this year, by 4 days ago. And it got extended. There was the extra budgetary provisions laid to it. So I don't think it'll leave before the end of this election, but it has to go. We all understand that it's not sustainable. And I say that not because the World Bank says it or the IMF says it. That is not really important to Nigeria. The reason it should be scrapped is because it's harming Nigeria. Many Nigerians, as I said, recognize that as well. So I think it's coming to an end. But the point that the Honourable Minister put out about the foil subsidies in other countries is of course not accurate. If you take the UK, for example, foil starts with a almost 60 pence excise tax, and then you add the cost of the foil, which is about a pound a litre right now, so that's £1.60, and then they put 20% VAT on top of both the tax and the oil price itself, so that's how you get to about £2 a litre right now. So when the government comes along and says in the UK, we're going to give a relief of 5 pence, that's 5 pence out of 80 pence of taxes. People are already paying the world price for it. The price they're paying in the UK is 10 times the foil price that is the subsidized price here in Nigeria. I mean, we know the price of diesel is over 800 naira a litre. And so diesel and foil are roughly the same cost. Close enough. So effectively, we know the global price for foil right now should be about 800 pence a litre. So the gap between 160 and 800 pence is enormous. And of course, it's compounded because, as marketers are now pointing out, they have to move the foil using diesel trucks. So the cost of moving foil all over the country has increased dramatically as well, particularly given our difficult infrastructure. So when you take all of these pieces together, and of course the fuel theft, the crude oil theft we discussed a bit earlier, we've come to an impossible situation. But as we all understand, an election year is very difficult to change the system, but it is not sustainable.
Yeah, and it is a tricky time to be discussing removing fuel subsidies. As you've all have said, it's a combination of a political and an economic situation. But let me turn my attention to Dr. Kabir Adamu. Can we discuss the host communities and also the PIA, the Petroleum Industry Act? The Minister of Information and Culture did discuss that there was provisions in the PIA that allowed for the host communities to profit in more ways than they have before. It's also been attributed, these host communities, to some of the vandalism and the disgruntled feelings that go around the way our fuel and the subsidies and everything is played about. But my question is, what role does the PIA play in maybe alleviating some of the pains that the host communities feel, and maybe that could alleviate some of the violence as well? I'm not so sure if that is very well correlated, but wondering if you could speak about that.
Yeah, so my understanding is that the focus and the essence of the PIA is to increase local participation in the industry. And if one of the grievances in the industry that is leading to all the security challenges that is being experienced in the host community, and we've talked about them, part of the oil theft that was referred to earlier is perhaps as a result of that grievance. Of course, there are other factors that may be driving that. And then, of course, even the sabotage within the oil production facilities is also a component of that. Now, all of this, unfortunately, would have a ripple effect on security. And so if there's an improvement, as it were, almost directly or immediately on participation of the local communities, and are able to see the benefit from the industry, and I think it would reduce tremendously the grievances that drive insecurity in the region.
All right, let me talk to you, Bola. Talk to me about this. People criticize this government that they do not have a reasonable policy response to massive economic problems. And that we do not have that means we almost lack the foresight to be able to plan for a problem and mitigate some of this, mitigate the outcomes of some of these problems.
Okay, to a certain extent, yes. And it has to do with the boldness to confront the elephants that are in the room. One of it is what we have just mentioned, the fuel subsidy. This administration had 2 opportunities to have removed fuel subsidy, but it did not. The first opportunity was when it just assumed office. The petroleum price went down. The oil price and the international was down. That was a good time to have removed fuel subsidy. By, over the year, people will have adjusted. The second time was in year 2000 during COVID.
2020
You said?
2020.
2020, yeah.
Okay.
In 2020, things were as bad as oil price became 0. So people were willing to dash you the oil that is in the vessel because they're still paying for storage there, and nobody was willing to buy. That was the second time, but we were unable to confront that monster in those periods. It is now very difficult. If you give a politician 4 trillion to spend and remove fuel subsidy, which one do you think he will take? I would take to spend 4 trillion. I don't want to face the protest that has to do with removing fuel subsidy as we speak. The other part has to do with diversification of the economic base of Nigeria. We paid too much lip service to our doing that. And as of today, we did a bit in the agri sector, no doubt about that. The rice production increased, number of meals increased. We gave loans to farmers and all of that. But you see, no economy, no rich economy in the world became rich by offering primary products to the world. You offer value-add products. If what you're doing is selling granite and selling raw cocoa, and you go there, even the Nestle at your backyard will go and import the same chocolate and bring it back to you. You're not going anywhere. So as far as the industrialization side of things is concerned, this administration was unable to deliver on this because we're all looking forward to things like electricity. And as we speak, there has not been any major change in that particular space. How do you industrialize without power? It's a major thing. So some of the critical issues were not done. It did a bit okay in the infrastructure space. Some roads, rails, even some terminals at the airport were done. A good part. But there are disconnects in all these things. A good disconnect is you give farmers money to finance primary production, but there is insecurity, which will eventually even make the loans to go bad. If they can't enter the farm, they collected their money, and they can't go there and use their money to farm, your money is gone down the drain. And when they produce, and there is still no electricity, so 40–50% of what they produce is destroyed. That's rotten. And the guy is not encouraged to go back to the farm because there's somebody chasing him in the farm. And apart from that, when he produces, he doesn't even get value for what he has produced. So without production, without offering something good to the world, there is no monetary policy in the world that could solve your exchange rate. So the fundamentals are not good. If you don't earn dollars, if you can't conserve the dollars you have, the little dollars you're able to get from selling primary product like crude oil, if you can't even conserve it because as you're selling crude, you're also buying refined product. If you can't do that, no monetary policy on earth can save a nation that cannot produce and have goods and services to offer the world.
Dr. Kabir Adamu, while speaking on the issue of oil theft, the Minister of Information and Culture, Lai Mohammed, says there are concerns about the culpability of the nation's security agencies and the involvement of some powerful stakeholders in the issue of oil theft. Now, some people believe that the same can also be said about the fight against terrorism, banditry, kidnapping, and so on. So my question now is, why is it so difficult for the government to identify these powerful individuals that are involved? Why is it so difficult to punish them, to preempt these attacks and nip them in the bud?
So unfortunately, this is a common factor within the security sector in Nigeria. The alleged involvement of the security operatives in oil theft is well documented. And not once, not twice, we've seen the leadership of some of the security organizations either redeploying their staff or in certain instances arresting them or detaining them, but then we never hear the outcome of that. So I think that it's a fact. It's not disputable that allegation is likely to be true. Anecdotal information from within the region, Niger Delta region, and from communities oil-producing communities also suggest the possible involvement of security operatives in the oil theft cartels. Now, to your question on why it's difficult or impossible to, deal with this issue. First off, I think it's the legacy, the military rule legacy that Nigeria is still living with, unfortunately. The civilian component of our government structures, unfortunately, still have that concern regarding the power that the security organizations embrace and have. We are yet to come to terms that the democratic system of government gives enormous power to especially the legislative arm of government that should have stepped in to deal with this issue using legislative powers, both of oversight as well as legislation. So that is one. Two, perhaps the lack of growth within our democratic system that still leaves the possibility of that the security sector taking measures to protect itself. Unfortunately, we've seen that in countries like Mali, even though they're not related to the same thing, but when discussing terrorism, there is some similarities there. What happened, the coups in Mali as a result of terrorism and other related factors. So that is at the back of the mind of, I guess, every politician in Nigeria. And unless we advance our democracy to that extent where the security organizations subject themselves 100% to the democratic institutions, and unfortunately this issue of either unwillingness or lack of the political desire to prosecute security officials who are guilty of such sharp practices will remain with us.
All right, thank you, Dr. Kabira. And last question for Andrew Nevin. With everything we've discussed, we know what the situation is like, and we know that the can is being kicked down the road. What do you foresee for Nigeria? Oh, and it seems that we have just lost Andrew. Let me direct this to you in the studio, Mr. Olojide. With the situation as it is, what do you foresee for Nigeria's future? We know that it has been dubbed as chaotic, this situation that we are in. If we do not remove these subsidies in the next 5 years, what do you foresee as the financial expert that?
If we don't remove it, we will not grow. That is the reality. A country that is going to spend 4 trillion to pay a few people in terms of subsidy. Because one of the biggest deceit in the space is about how the poor are the main beneficiaries of subsidy. But further analysis will show that no, it is part of the window dressing. So if we don't deal with it, it will eventually sink us. That is the reality. However, the opportunity is there for the next government to see what it can do as far as this problem is concerned, because it can actually be dealt with.
It can be. Thank you so much for joining the discussion today. Of course, Gbolahan Olojide, as well as Andrew Nevin from PricewaterhouseCoopers, and of course, Dr. Kabir Adamu. Thank you so much for the discussion this afternoon.